ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. शांति शांति शांति. Namaste my dear friends. I am going to narrate a story from the Katha Upanishad of the Samaveda. The theme of this story is that we are simply the instruments and machines, and every work is done by the Almighty God. Due to the ignorance and controlled by our ego, we think we are the doer. But in reality, it is not the case. Every work, every task is completed by God. Just our self, we act as just a device in the hand of God. Another theme of this story is it brings the central truth that Brahma, the Absolute, cannot be realized by mere logical reasoning. As long as we take our stand as the Paramatru, the seeker after knowledge, however far away we may roll back the bounds of ignorance, there will still be left a fringe of ignorance on the border of our knowledge. We may go as far as thought can reach and yet fail to reach the Absolute. When such is the case, it is easy to imagine that would be the lot of those who are either ignorant of it or indifferent to it. It is in order to bring home to us the real nature of the Absolute that the Shruti gives us the dialogue between an earnest aspirant and his spiritual guide, or a perceptor, or a guru. Now the disciple puts a question to his perceptor. Revered sir, there are some who say that nothing enters their mind except through the gateway of the senses. Will you please let me know by what power, by whose will does the mind seek to comprehend objects, the vital breath to function, and the senses of eye and ear become the gateway of knowledge? Now the guru or the spiritual perceptor reply, he of whom you ask is the ear of the ear, the eye of the eye, and the life of the life breath. The discriminating person never regards the senses as the self. That's why he attains immortality. The mind and the senses cannot attain it. The physical body is not endowed with intelligence. What is the nature of that intelligence that causes the senses to function Moreover, the senses have no independent existence apart from the self. The mind is not free either to desire or to be indifferent to an object. The mind sometimes avoids what should be done and seeks what it should not. Hence the question, who is the ordiner, the master of the mind? Unless the vital breath functions, the senses cannot function, hence special mention of it. The same conscious being, though manifested in various ways as the hearer and the seer, is one and the same. It is the eternal witnessing consciousness. The senses have no separate existence apart from the self. Moreover, the self undergoes no change, for it is not an assemblage of parts and whole. The consciousness of the self, when superimposed upon the senses, gives to them their apparent reality. That is why it is so difficult to know the self. It is not an object of knowledge, and therefore we cannot call it the known, nor can we call it the unknown, for it is our own self. No book learning can impart it to us. The enlightened guide points it out to the disciple and says, "Behold, it is by the grace of that the senses function and come to be known, although they cannot comprehend it. Without it they cannot function. Whoever says, 'I know all about the Absolute,' should be deemed to know very little indeed. That which is an object of knowledge must have certain attributes such as genus, species, and differentia. As Brahma is devoid of all such attributes and consequently takes part in no activity, it does not become an object of comprehension for the senses. That's why Brahma can be known only from the Shrutis. Only that which is different from the knower can be classified as known, unknown. Brahma does not come under either of these. Brahma becomes practically one with the knower ultimately. The senses seem to function as if independently help of self-consciousness. In the statement, "I see a cow," I is the knower, the is the known, and seeing is the means of knowledge. This distinction does not exist in the Atma, which is limited, can be the object of knowledge. The infinite, there is no limit to Brahma. We cannot say what Brahma is or what Brahma knows. All that we can say is that Brahma is beyond sense perception, not as the object of knowledge, but as the self of the knower. Hence, Svatah Siddha self-existent, whose existence gives validity to every kind of awareness. It is not an assemblage of parts, it cannot be divided and undergoes no modification. Brahma is the eternal Sakshi, witness. Atma is Brahma. Now the disciple puts the question, I do not say that I know all about Brahma, nor do I say that I cannot know Brahma at all. The Shruti says, Brahma is known to him who knows that he is unknowable. It also says, it is unknown to him who says it is knowable. Does it not mean that the way to know Brahma is to understand the significance of this double negation? Maybe not say that Brahma becomes manifest as the Pratyagatman, as pure consciousness, and would not such knowledge lead to liberation and the attainment of immortality? The spiritual perceptor replies, you know how our ancients used to bring out the hidden truth of religion in the form of stories. You will now hear one of those stories. In very ancient times, a great war arose between the Devas, gods, and the shining ones, and the Asuras, demons, the titans. Now disciple puts a question, may I know, sir, the cause of the war? Cause of the war? The spiritual perceptor replies, the usual cause, the good lack strength, the good lack strength, and the strong lack goodness. The Devas obeyed the laws of God and spent their time in receiving sacrificial offerings from men and giving them divine blessings. The usual cause, the good lack strength and the strong lack goodness. The Devas obeyed the laws of God and spent their time in receiving sacrificial offerings from men and giving them divine blessings in return. The Asuras, who represented the party of might as right, found a special delight in disturbing the order of the cosmos. The sadistic temperament is never happy unless it makes others miserable. Disciple puts a question. Yes, there are people with an inverted sense of values. The spiritual perceptor answers, just so in the beginning the Asuras carried all before them, but thanks to the intervention of Brahma, the Devas gained victory in the end. But they were so intoxicated with the sense of victory that they forgot to render thanks where thanks was due. The disciple puts a question. That is very bad. It is as if the moon should forget that it shines by borrowed light from the sun. The spiritual perceptor. The Devas wished to hold a victory parade. Agni was their Agramin, leader in war and peace. The spiritual perceptor. The Devas wished to hold a victory parade. Agni was their agragamin leader in war and peace. Vayu was next in command, and all the Devas assembled in their customary splendor. As was befitting his rank, Indra came last. All of a sudden, there flashed before them a luminous being, a yaksha, the like of whom they had never seen before. Although struck with astonishment, the Devas wished to investigate what it was. They had firmly persuaded themselves that there was nothing in the world that was unknown to them. They wanted to deputation upon Agni and requested him to investigate this strange phenomenon. Agni, as the chosen representatives of the Devas and conscious of his prowess, approached that strange being, but he lost his presence of mind, and it was left to the strange being to put him the question, "Who are you?" Agni answered proudly, "People call me Jata Devas, Jata Vedas, the all-knower." Literally, who knows all things that are born. It may also mean that from which wealth or the effects of action karmas are produced. Agni carries to the Devas the offering of clarified butter that is poured into the sacrificial fire. The spirit said, "Your name is known, but what is it that you can do?" Agni replied, "I can reduce everything into ashes." The spirit put a piece of straw before Agni and said, "Please burn this." The mighty Agni, who can reduce a forest into cinders, who is invoked and worshipped as the first of the revoked and invoked and worshipped as the first of the Devas at every sacrifice, and who had recently taken such a prominent part in gaining victory for the Devas, smiled with apparent disdain at such a trifling command. Although he put forth his whole energy as if he would burn down the whole world, it was all in vain. He returned discomforted. The spiritual perceptor. They waited in deputation upon Indra, their lord and master, with a request that he should help them to solve the mystery. Finally, Indra arrived upon the scene, but he too was astonished, though it was for an entirely different reason. The being that he came to question had vanished all of a sudden. But Indra was not made to return with a tale of defeat. Though vexed with himself, he stayed on, plunged in deep thought. There is a saving grace in the power of meditation. It took him beyond the sense world and its hopes and fears. He totally forgot the luminous being which was the object of his quest. He bowed in reverence before what was mysterious. The disciple puts a question. Perhaps he too felt that if he who knows does not know, then he who does not know is in a better position to know. The spiritual perceptor replies, I am glad you have caught the significance of the story, for it was precisely then that there appeared before him Mother Uma, the universal mother, the custodian of the Vedas, and who is the source of creation, preservation, and destruction of the universe, appeared before him like an image made of molten gold. Her very presence kindled in his mind a sense of bliss that had never before been experienced. She instructed him and said that what he was in quest of was none other than Brahma. She instructed him and said that what he was in quest of was none other than Brahma. The disciple puts a question, unless mother favors, unless the goddess of learning instruct a person, one cannot attain the knowledge of the Absolute. The spiritual perceptor, you are right, the knowledge of Brahma is attained with the help of the Shrutis and the instruction of a spiritual guide. It cannot be attained by any other means. The disciple, what happened to Indra then? The spiritual perceptor, what happens to a lump of lead when it comes into contact with the philosopher's stone? The alchemy of Brahmajnana transmutes life's leaden metal into gold. Indra realized that Brahma, the Supreme, pervades everywhere, that there is no manifestation apart from Brahma. He is the self of all. He and his power are inseparable. He exalts those whom he humbles. It is by the knowledge of Brahma that the Devas are superior to others and Indra superior to the other Devas. Instructed by Uma, the Devas learned Brahma is like flash of lightning or like the winking of the eye. The disciple asks a question, Revered Sir, how does this story help us? The spiritual perceptor replies, it tells us not only of the Devas but also of the mind. It means that Brahma is to be meditated upon as Tandava. What the Devas saw was Brahma as conditioned by manifestation, because it pervades simultaneously everywhere. For it is very swift. The work of creation, preservation and destruction are carried on by Brahma very swiftly without anybody's help, and yet Brahma remains unmodified by them in his own glory. Saying to oneself, my mind has entered the domain of illumination of Brahma and exists there, all thoughts are on Brahma. It is the flash of Brahma in the mind which is manifested as sankalpa, thinking and memory. Tandva literally means the object of adoration. Now the disciple puts a question, I realize fully the need of instruction by a spiritual guide. Please instruct me, sir, in the knowledge of Brahma. The spiritual perceptor replies, what has been given till now is itself the instruction. The goal has been stated. If you want to know the means to it, that is a different matter. The disciple, yes sir, that is what I wish to hear. The spiritual perceptor, well, you know what a foot in poetry is. It is this sense that austerity, control of the senses, and the proper observance of worship form the fit of the Upanishads. The Vedas form its limbs as it were. Truth is its abode. Whoever knows Brahma in the way in which it ought to be known becomes sinless, is never reborn, and is established in eternal bliss. The Atma is Sabtah Siddha, it is already self existent, therefore, there is nothing that is to be done in order to acquire it anew. All that is necessary is to know it. Control of the body, the senses, and the mind by observing the rules of Brahmacharya. Control of the inner feelings by observing self-restraint. The body and the mind are tools for attaining knowledge. By keeping them pure, they become fit instruments of knowledge. Truth and humility are mentioned because they stand very close to the Absolute. Truth is specially mentioned for it is the supreme sadhana. So, this is a wonderful story and teaches us that we are under the influence of ignorance and maya. We are not able to see the reality. Our every function and task is being fulfilled under the control of maya and egoistic mood. We must understand that we are simply the instruments and machines, but the actual doer of every task is Brahma, God Himself. So we must understand this reality. It is very important, and we must stop giving significance to our ego and ignorance. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video. Subscribe the channel. Namaskar my dear friends. Thank you.